Well, listen to what Paul goes on to say to Timothy in 1 Timothy. Now, we know that the law is good if, we just found a new word. We know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully, understanding this, that the law is not laid down for the just, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and sinners, for the unholy and profane, for those who strike their fathers and mothers, for murderers, the sexually immoral, men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine, in accordance with the gospel of the glory of the blessed God with which I have been entrusted. He says the law is good if it is used lawfully. Which means that there's a way to use the law unlawfully. There's a way to use the law in a way that makes it not good. Well, what's using it lawfully? Well, in this passage, he says it is in accordance with the gospel. The law has to have the gospel at the center for us. He says, understanding that it is not laid down, understanding that the law is not laid down for the just. Okay, wait a minute. The just. Who's the just? Well, Jesus is described in one place as the just and the justifier. I mean, Jesus is the only one who's really perfect. So is Paul writing that the law is not laid down for Jesus? That's not contextually what he's talking about. See, he's not saying that you have to be perfect here to be the just. What he's saying is that you have been made perfect by Jesus. And so if you have placed your faith in Jesus, you are the just. And if you are the just, then the law is not laid down for you. You are set free not just from the law, but from sin. You're not just set free from something, from sin or from the law, but to something to be able to obey God. You're actually able to obey and live the kind of life that he has called you to live under his moral standards. Now, wait a minute, does that mean I go back under the law again? No. See, people make a really simple mistake. It's this. Morality did not begin with the Old Testament Mosaic law. Adam sinned before the law. Satan sinned before the law. Lots of people sinned after the law. See, the law points to Jesus. It tells us about Jesus. It tells us what sin is, but it was limited in scope. It was written for the Jews. And Jesus put a period on the end of that sentence. In Christ, you are set free from the law and from sin. I was reading an article this week that actually described this really well. I love this. The guy was saying, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like God went to the Jews and he handed them a rule book for soccer. He said, this is the game we're playing. 613 rules on soccer. Good luck, this is the game. You win the game by following these rules. And so the Jews studied the rules. They knew what the rules were. You got to do this, I can't do that. And this is how I'm going to keep score. I've got to keep doing these things right in order to rack up the points to be able to win this thing. This is the rule. And then Jesus came along. He said, all right, can I see that back? He closed it and handed him a new rule book and said, now we're doing a team marathon. Now, the team marathon is similar, has some commonalities. We need an allegiance to the coach, allegiance to the team. We got to be healthy. I mean, there's all kinds, you read the New Testament, there's lots of do this and do not do that kind of things, right? And a lot of the do this and do not do those things are the same as the other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of commonality, but the most important thing is the entire scoring system has changed. Instead of trying to rack up points by the things that we do and the things that we don't do, now we're running this team marathon, and one of our teammates happens to be Jesus, who's run the race so freaking fast that it doesn't matter how fast we ran it, we still win because we're Team Jesus. And so now we run the race not to rack up points to either be saved or continue in salvation, but for the joy of running on Jesus' team. We run the race, inviting other people to join us in the race, and that's the joy. So what do we end up doing? We obey the purpose of the law. We love God and we love people.